2016 Rutherford County Board of Education meeting, and we'll begin tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance. And our REA President, Ms. Deborah Hunt, will be leading us in the pledge this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'll join with us this evening for a moment of silence, one of our people here, Miss Kim Day, the death of her father, who is E.L. Taylor. Ms. Day is one of our instructional specialists in math and in science. And so he passed away this week, so please join us for a moment of silence or remember this family during our time. Thank you. I have the opportunity once a year to start the meeting. And tonight we begin with, on our agenda is the election of our 2016-17 Rutherford County Board of Education chairperson. So the floor is now open for nominations for chairperson for the 2016-17. Mr. Blair nominates Mr. Jeff Jordan. Do we have a second to that nomination?
Second.
We have a second. Other nominations?
Mr. Jordan, I'll move that nominations be closed and Mr. Jordan be elected by acclamation.
Do you have a second to that motion?
I would second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor of closing the nomination and electing Mr. Jordan by acclamation, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? The ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you, Director Odom, and thank you, Board. Also, I think it's extremely appropriate that maybe we as an audience, perhaps with a round of applause, that we thank Mr. Hodge and Mr. Blair. They have been either vice chair or chairman for 4 years, and I think done an excellent job. And I'm going to applaud them, and I wish you would join me. Mr. Chairman. First order of business is to elect a vice chair, and the floor is open for nominations.
Mr. Jordan, I'll nominate Mr. Jim Estes.
Need a second for that?
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Holliday, Ms. Moore, thank you. Are there other nominations for vice chair?
I move that we cease nominations and that we elect Mr. Estes as vice chairman by acclamation.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Ms. Moore, thank you. Any discussion at all? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. Congratulations, Mr. Estes, vice chair.
He would serve on the conservation board. He may have us exercise him. Probably wouldn't hurt, would it?
No, it wouldn't be, that is for sure. Before we get to the approval of the agenda, the most important thing on tonight's agenda isn't on your agenda, and that is to wish Ms. Joyce Michaels a very happy birthday yesterday. She is finally able to vote in the presidential election this coming November. Okay, I need approval of the agenda. I assume all of you have, of course, a copy and you've looked it over.
So moved.
Mr. Blair, thank you. I need a second,
Second.
please. A second, Ms. Moore, thank you. Recommend approval. Motion to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. As Dr. Bullen would say, things are just moving right along. Approval of consent agenda, which I believe you have also a copy of this, and it includes a number of sports-related and band-related and bus drivers and so forth. All of this, I think, is extremely familiar to all of you, right down through the volunteer faculty coaches. Any questions about the consent agenda? If not, need a motion for passage.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Holliday. A second? Was that Mr. Estes? Any comment or discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, and there are none, of course. So that is approved, and we did not have a work session. This is it, folks. This is as good as it gets for this week. I believe you told me we have no visitors. Is that correct?
One.
We have one visitor. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Ms. Hunt, welcome.
I'm Deborah Hunt, President of Rutherford Education Association, and I've just come to bring greetings for the new year to the board. We, a number of us went to the National Education Association Assembly this summer, and so really I'm here because I didn't get to complain this summer, and I like to complain. We met people from all over the country, and we had people who said things like, our school board won't work with us. And I said, well, ours kind of teamed up with us and went out into the schools to help fight off some really bad legislation and get support for things that would help our students. And they said, well, yeah, but ours have never even seen the inside of a school building. And I said, well, ours build like a school a year, and they know the people that are running them and what it costs per student to run that school. And Mr. Jordan and some of the others know some really good stories about people that are in the older schools and have gone there for a long time. And they said, yeah, but they're really only interested in saving money. And I said, well, we kind of have a reputation for doing more with less, which doesn't mean they're not trying to get more for us. So I bring you greetings from the Teachers Association in the hopes that we will have an equally, I guess, complaint-free year, that we'll have a year as good as last year's. We want to congratulate Mr. Holliday on a solid and honorable run in his efforts for higher office, his efforts to support education in Rutherford County. And certainly we want to, yes, absolutely, we want to congratulate Mr. Jordan not only on his reelection, but also now on his rise to the, I guess it's a rise. Some of you are like, maybe not. To the presidency of the board. And we look forward to another cooperative year between the Teachers Association and our Rutherford County Board of Education.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt. One visitor, and as you know, you have 3 minutes at any meeting in the future. Insurance update, Ms. Barnes. I don't believe you've met, or have you met?
I did.
Oh, okay. Like I said, I knew you met.
We met last Thursday, And I'll just give you some statistics. The self-funded increase year-to-date is at 5.9%, and the self-funded and on-site medical combined, the increase is at 6.4% for this year-to-date. And we were proud to see that we only had 2 injuries from the Rutherford County Board of Education this past month, so that's definitely a decrease from what we typically see. Just a note that the wellness initiative that is in place for this year began on 1/1/16. The deadline is September 30th, 2016, for anyone covered under the medical plan to complete the biometric screening, which is the blood draw, and the Cigna HRA survey, which they go online through the Cigna site to complete, in order to avoid the $30 per month or $300 per year additional charge to them. So we have sent out many reminders to our employees, and we will be sending those weekly through the month of September to make sure that we ask all of our employees to complete that process once again. The last thing is that we will begin talking about open enrollment probably in our next meeting, and the open enrollment dates are scheduled for October 17th through the 31st of this fall.
Next meeting is when?
I don't have that in front of me, Mr.
Okay.
Jordan, but I'm sure it is the last Thursday in September.
Any questions for Ms. Barnes? If not, thank you. Let's move on to general discussion by board members. I know the director has some material he wants to go over. You want to do that now, or you want to do general discussion?
Well, it may pose some questions to you. I tell you what I would like to do, if it's okay with the board, is probably insert another one in there, but right before general discussion by board members, maybe a director's update. This year with ESSA coming in and some of the changes, I'm not talking about doing a lot more than what I've done in the past, you know, but it always turns out there's 1 or 2 things that I'd kind of like for y'all to know about that's going on. So if it doesn't bother you, we might just put something in it, and then the agenda reflects more what we do, just from accuracy's state, if I could. First thing I want to talk about, you should have a copy of Rutherford County Board of Education's organizational chart. We are requested several times throughout the year. Ms. McLeod runs into it, several others. What's your organizational chart? And certainly not everybody in the central office is up here on this chart, but the one we had was really quite out of date. So all of our assistant superintendents have looked at it, and this one should be fairly close with positions. But I thought starting a new school year and board starting, it would give you a chance to kind of see some of these positions and some of the tree structure that kind of goes on up here. So as you get time, take a look at it and see names are not on it, but positions are basically there, so you can see that. The second one, we received a request probably to distribute, and it's called Girl Talk. The Rutherford County Agricultural Extension Office, you know, the extension agents through that, Tennessee Department of Health, Rutherford County Department of Health, is creating so-called Girl Talk, some seminars. So I thought you would see, this is the brochure that'll probably go out with some of our students, and they're on evenings starting in October at 6 p.m. For mothers and girls in grades 4 through 6. So I'm sure they'll start advertising this, but I didn't want you as board members to, some constituents ask you, what is this? But it's not us, it is the extension office. So that's kind of what it is. So anyway, that you'll know what that might be. This afternoon, this ended our first month of school, 20 days, actually today. So the third handout that you have is the enrollment and growth numbers for the first school month that ended today. And as of this afternoon, in our K through 12, we had 43,642. That's 1,061 more than the end of the first month last year. I missed my estimate. I think the last board meeting I told you that it'd be between 950 and 1050, so I'm off a little bit on that one. But we'll track it and see. You can see by school the growth, the changes. If you actually put in our PK through 12, add our preschool in, and I don't think all their names are in yet, it's 43,802. So we'll continue to give you updates during the year. The other thing that I did in added to this spreadsheet on the far right-hand side, if the school grew by as much as 4%, then it's bold type and the arrow right beside it. So we have 18 schools that grew by 4% or more this last year. As you know, in November, we have to revisit our 5-year building plan. We're looking at zones for the new Rocky Fork or any other zoning that we might do. But anyway, as of today, this afternoon, that should be fairly accurate. I pulled it right off the computer and pasted it in from the student computer. Any questions or any comments or anything on that? 2.49% growth over the same period last year.
I want to point out that the 32% growth at Holloway High School, I know that Holloway is doing a number of things in their instructional program and just, I went to their open house that was a month or more ago, and there's just a real excitement at Holloway High School this year, and that 32% growth is really excellent, and I wish all of the folks there just the very best as they're getting started on some revitalized programs.
You know, one of the things that we're moving for we'll go to a commission is the new high school at Rock Vale. And if you look at the bottom, when you look at the categories under high school, middle school, and K-5, the growth for the middle school is 390. That's only 3 grades, 6, 7, 8. And yet it's larger than any of our other categories that have more grades included. So you know, going down the next few years with that growth in middle school, what that means for our high school growth. So high school with 344 this 1 year, just in 1 year. So we're going very quickly in those particular grade groupings. So these are data and statistics and things that we'll, of course, take to the commission with health and ed and budget and finance and share. But anyway, it's good for you to know, so as you talk to people in the community or you ask questions. But anything else on that one? One other thing that I'd like to share with you then, I did spend about 3 hours yesterday listening to an attorney talk about Every Student Succeeds Act. It was over at Embassy Suites. It's in for a federal program. This person is from Washington, and I'm not going to read to you tonight, but I want to point out a few things in ESSA, some that I didn't know, some that you may need to know, and then we'll follow it or track it during the year. I did look up today, and there's 1,061 pages in ESSA, in that law. So, you know, if there's that many in there, there are a few surprises kind of in that. But in general, kind of going, it's under number 4 under the general. ESSA is not implemented until the 17-18 school year. Parts of No Child Left Behind we're still under, although the Commissioner, Secretary of Education has waived parts of that. One of them being the highly qualified for teachers and some of the others, because that is not a part of ESSA. So there's some things that they did change. The language changes in ESSA. Instead of saying the highly qualified or something, is certified, licensed, certified. It really saying a lot of the same thing, only some language change. So just letting you know, 17 or 18 is a big year. The B part there under assessment options, I know you as a board are interested all, what are they disaggregating, what are they going to look for, what groups, and that's the listing there, 6 areas. The first 4 will be, accountability will be tied to whether you meet these conditions or not. Number 5 and 6, which is migrant status and gender, they do have to track how many students, but there's no accountability measure. In other words, you don't look for academic growth. You're not going to report some grade or something on that. So that's it. The other thing, and of course, one of the big parts of ESSA was to turn more control back over to the states, and that's a real focus in that the states have more authority. So I thought you'd be interested in knowing that states need to submit their plans by March 6, 2017, or they could choose the July 5th date. I think our state is working very hard to try to make the March 6, 2017 to do that. what do state plans have to include? Looking at, again, steps to be taken to provide assistance to LEAs, local education agencies, and schools supporting early education programs. So evidently there's a little more emphasis in the preschool or early education in this federal legislation. Another thing, how low-income and minority students are not served at disproportionate rates by underqualified teachers. So one of the things that's going to happen here, we're going to have to report out what is the licensure level, BS, masters, are they qualified, that sort of thing is going to be tied to the schools. We're looking to see if higher poverty schools are staffed differently than those that do not have as much poverty. So that's going to become part of the report card and everything too. So that's a little bit different. I thought you would like number 4 there. It's new in this one. The state plan must coordinate academic and CTE content through instructional strategy which may include experiential learning or work-based learning opportunities. We should be in good shape there in Rutherford County. But Tennessee will have to include that in their plan. So I thought you would enjoy seeing that. On page 2, kind of flipping it over again, I'm not going to read it all to you because you can read that. Still, the state and LEA report cards under ESSA, as it was in No Child Left Behind, there must be an annual report card issued, and it lists there some of the information. Still, the academic piece, 95% of the students tested, the graduation rates, that sort of thing. But one of the new things, and I actually called Mr. Sandvig when I heard this, is number 7 under D7 on the second page. This is new this year, per pupil expenditures for federal, state, and local funds, and this must be actual expenditures. It has to be disaggregated by the source of the funds. In other words, how much federal, how much state, how much local. And C is what's really interesting. Look at that one. For each local education agency and each school for the preceding year, you got to include costs of administration, instruction, instructional support, student support, pupil transportation, operation and maintenance, fixed charges, preschool, net expenditure to cover deficits of food service, and student body activities. You do not include community services, capital outlay, or debt service. So, one of the reasons I actually, while I was there, we had a break, and kind of in the middle of that 3 hours, I called Mr. Salmon and I said, oh, wow. And the reason I said that is because the report card comes out in 17-18, but the data is 1 year behind for this. So where we are now for 16-17 is the data that would go in the 17-18 report card unless the state gets a waiver. So what we're doing right now will play into this report. So how well our software, how well we can track this, I can see this being a really challenge for many of our small school systems around the state to do, but it's in the federal legislation, so that's there. E there is accountability, and much of that is the same as No Child Left Behind, the achievement, the progress, the graduation rate. One of the big things in ESSA is progress in achieving English language proficiency. They changed from limited English proficient. They said it didn't sound good to say limited English proficient, so now it's called English learners. So that terminology changed, and that's what we knew as ESL, or we have now. I have been talking to our people in ESL. Some of their counts are still testing students to see who qualifies. We may be up a couple hundred students again this year in our population for English learners. Now trying to use this, but we'll get you, as that settles a little bit more, we'll get you some more information in that. Looking down under the accountability piece, again, that's very similar to the No Child Left Behind. Look at number small Roman numeral 7, which is the last one under E. Actual, meaningful differentiation of school performance that must include at least 3 levels of performance, yielding a single summative rating from among at least 3 categories with academic factors weighted the most heavily. And Tennessee, the legislature last year passed a law, if you remember, that our schools in Tennessee will have to be given a letter grade from A to F. and that should start in the 17 to 18 report card. So my guess is that law will meet this definition. So all across the country, and I don't know what to be above, average, or below if you had 3 categories, but I think Tennessee, because of the law passed last year, is going to be the A through F letter grades. And there are committees working on that now of what's included. We can tell from ESSA, the academic piece, the graduation rate. There's another piece in there that's a different type of measure that's kind of something about the school in general that the state hasn't told us what'll be included. But anyway, another requirement of this law is that once they work out what Tennessee is working out to do as their measures for their application, it has to be posted and open to public comment again. That's part of ESSA also. So we'll let people know, and you can know too, that you can comment on Tennessee's before it's submitted. So sometime in the fall, very early winter, I'm sure Tennessee will post up their plan for ESSA, and which we can then comment on. And I love number F there, and I'm kind of sound like Mr. Holliday here, I guess, in this. All throughout ESSA, when they had another section come up, they inserted some language to address the U.S. Secretary of Education. It's really interesting when you look at this thing. And here's some things that this is prohibitions that the U.S. Secretary of Education cannot do. He cannot specify additional pieces of the accountability system. In other words, what's in the law, the measures you're looking at here is what has to be done, and much of that is the state decision. 2, he cannot endorse a specific curriculum or develop a federally sponsored assessment, so you're not going to get a federal test, and they can't tell you what to teach, and that's what he's saying. He cannot issue non-regulatory guidance that purports to be legally binding. That's exactly what they told you when you went up there. He can't come down with these dear colleague letters necessarily and bind us based under this law, if it's something in that. But I love that last one there, and she had this in her presentation and I'm not going to be always using the Washington Post quote, but I did like this one. It said, Washington Post quotes anonymous source as saying, under this law, the secretary is allowed to go across the street and get a cup of coffee. I thought that was kind of interesting. One of them actually said maybe it's Starbucks or something, but evidently there's a lot of strings tied to the Secretary of Education. Just another thing kind of for us this fall, we are working on again, which we actually did back through the winter, our strategic plan for Rutherford County, because the other one we had is expired basically. And if you look across the whole state of Tennessee from school systems everywhere, and the reason nobody is posting up one much yet is because they're trying to figure out this accountability. What targets do you put in there? How do you write up much of a strategic plan if you don't have some targets in there? Some of those are developing, like the ACT of 21 that's coming up, dates for that and all. So if the board would like to this fall, we have a rough draft, and we're working on now building Rutherford County strategic plan, certainly with the information that we have. So as we go through the fall, if y'all decide you want to do that or have some special meetings to look at our strategic plan again, we're in the process of doing that. I just wanted to make you aware of that. And I actually had much of it earlier till all of this ESSA, when it finally passed and everything, that we said we better hold up till we get direction from the state. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Unless there are questions, I don't have somebody.
Questions for the director?
I would just respond to the hypothetical that he's offered there about the strategic plan. Yes, yes, and absolutely yes. I would like to be involved and hear from and participate in the development of strategic plan. And along those lines, I think that as an emphasis has come out of ESSA for local control, a right and proper response and reaction to an overreach from the federal government. What we may find is that local control translates once again into standards in some states may purport that there is high achievement when in fact there is not. because local control allows for local standards and then a local assessment of just how well they're doing. There are still things in ESSA that will work, to try and control that. But I want to encourage and also highlight our recent uptick in performance on ACT scores. And as a system, I think that this is the measuring point that takes us from competing amongst the other systems in the state of Tennessee and truly competing among the best in the nation. This is kind of the leveling of the playing field that says, where are we, how are we accomplishing? As we continue to see Central Magnet School perform among the best high schools in the nation, among the top 10, top 15 high schools in the entire nation, we similarly want to see our school system be consistently ranked in the top 25 and push into the top 15 and the top 10 as we develop a strategic plan going forward. So whatever the state of Tennessee decides to benchmark, very well, that's excellent. I believe that it is appropriate for Rutherford County because of our history and because of our achievement to continue to accept all of those benchmarks in the state of Tennessee and achieve higher benchmarks among the best in the nation.
Any other questions for the director or comments? General discussion by board members.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to also echo what President Hunt from the REA said that about the partnership and the collaboration that this board has had with our local association, and I would hope and pray that we would continue to communicate and in partnership with our teachers and administrators and continue those good relationships and again the partnering. If I may, I'll just go ahead and get me out of the way. I'd like to remind everybody that our Blue Raiders are playing Saturday, and so football is here, and pretty excited about that. And if I could do a shout out for the Smyrna Rotary Club, and the reason I'm doing that is the Smyrna Rotary Club is the parent-teacher organization for Smyrna West Alternative, because they do not have a parent association. They have needs and funds that they would normally get through their parents and other stakeholders, but since they don't really have that, the Smyrna Rotary Club is their provider, and we're having our annual fish fry September the 10th. We'd like for the community to be involved in that. And the reason I mention it is because our relationship with Smyrna West. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Anyone else? Mr. Young.
To remember Truman Jones' family. Keep them in our prayers.
A good reminder, absolutely.
Visitation tomorrow evening?
Tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I believe.
3 to 7.
And then funeral is 2:30 on Saturday.
Anything else from anyone?
Mr. Jordan, I just want to offer something that, as board members, we get calls from time to time from parents and various things, and there's not always a policy or an avenue for a board member to address a situation, but general board discussion seems like a possibility. We are consistent and specific about some things that happen in our culture today that we say are not appropriate in our schools. And one of those things that we have done an excellent job of is explaining to students that though they may have access to technology and cell phones and all kinds of things, if they are ever in possession of a photograph of a individual under the age of 18 in a state of undress, then that is a serious, serious problem. I think we've gotten that message out pretty well, and our students understand that. Recently, I have encountered where some students are filming one another in violent acts. And whether those acts are consensual or for show, it really does not make any difference. And if those acts are considered to be cool or fun, as a board member, I just wanted to speak to that and kind of start the ball rolling in a direction that we're consistent on a message that any kind of violence between our students is just inappropriate. No matter what our culture may say, we just can't have that kind of thing. And so comes from a recent event where I had interaction with parents, and they were challenged by those things. And I think that all of the school officials handled it very, very well. But if anyone else out there has not experienced that, let's be ever vigilant and watching out for that.
Thank you, Mr. Holliday.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ms. Moore.
to just give a brief kind of update and follow up to the board about the concern that came up we discussed at length at the last meeting regarding the social and emotional learning. I had planned to attend the committee meeting that they were going to hold yesterday and found out the last minute that the meeting had been canceled. And I'd just like to read to the board real quickly, if I may, a statement, I guess, that went out from Ms. Connor, who's the director of that program with the state. And it says, the previously scheduled meeting for Thursday has been postponed. We will reach out soon with a new date for the first meeting. The work around social and personal competencies is vital to Tennessee's students' readiness for the workforce. Thus, it's critical to align this work with other state goals around workforce readiness. So I don't believe that it's gone away, but she does go on to say, thus it's critical to align this with other state goals. Due to the time required to ensure this alignment, we cannot meet the timeline set forth by CASEL. So as a result, we will not be able to be part of the collaboration of the state's initiatives. So I was very pleased at least to hear that, and hopefully that it's going under a little more serious consideration about what's truly right for Tennessee and not just having someone else's agenda pushed on us. So just wanted to report that out.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Questions or comments from anyone else? Ms. Michaels and I are meeting tomorrow, and we're going to go over the schedule from next week through Santa Claus, and like I said, through January, and of course she will contact you by email. We don't have a firm date for our next meeting, work session, and so forth, but we've got a lot to do between now and January, including rezoning of a school and of course our usual meetings, and I think you have a building plan meeting on the agenda as well. If there's nothing else, we stand adjourned. Thank you.